Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Do you know, I'm loving this. Let's give you all a little bit of a picture. So our lovely Obi is hosting us tonight. So we're actually around the lounge. We're not round a table tonight.
Yep.
This feels good.
There's cookies as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
very
mean,
nice.
biscuit. Obi's treating us tonight.
Yeah, it's cool.
look
It's
at
cool.
this.
Although only two of us have imbibed cookies so far. Two of you are kind of not involving yourselves.
Can I
in
just
those.
say, I had celebrations with my bestie. So we did
okay.
afternoon tea, and I have eaten so much cake, I never want to see a cake again in my entire life. It was ridiculous.
Does that mean your cookie can stay there for the rest of the evening, staring at the rest
A
of us?
million%, and I can't eat it anyway. So rock on, gentlemen. Have
And
my
you s-
cookie.
You said you were quite full, James, as well.
I am, so my cookie might stay there as well. But it's just the start of the evening, so we shall see what happens.
You never know.
That'll be Obi and I doing an extra run then.
Yeah, I did a run today, so I felt good eating a cookie.
So thank you for hosting us tonight, Obi.
You're welcome. Yeah, I wasn't planned, but I'm glad to have you guys here. Come on. It's one of those weeks where I'm doing Daddy Home Alone, and these lovely people decided to rock up
We did.
and do podcast at home. So that's life. That's
It was
cool.
me that actually invited us
You-
over, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was good. It was a good move. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's really nice. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to make it. So this is really lovely. So just to picture you, you've got Obi in a relaxed, reclining armchair. I'm sitting on the floor on a lovely perf. Stuart's sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed. James, you definitely can't do that because you're just too tall and long. So you're perched. So we are very relaxed.
Yes.
And you know what? I think it's really nice that we're relaxed because we're just going to do a little bit of a check-in tonight, aren't we? We were a little bit like, what would we like to bring to the table? And actually, after announcing at church on Sunday that this is what we do, it was really nice to come together tonight and go, actually, let's check in.
Yeah.
How have we been finding doing the podcast? How is it going for us all? And actually, how are we going in some of the things that we've spoken about that the Lord has challenged us over this last so many months? And what is the Lord saying at the moment? So who wants to start off? This is when everyone's quiet. How are you guys all finding doing the podcast? Considering this was just a literal general chit-chat that we had, and I put it out there that I felt like this was something that we should do. You all jumped on board very quickly, which shocked me. As I don't actually think I was saying we should do it. And then you were like, yeah, let's do it. How are you finding it? Are you enjoying it? Are you growing in it? Are you feeling like, oh my goodness, are we going to run out of things to say? How are you feeling about being part of this, Obi? I knew if I put out, all of you lot would be
This
quiet.
is the second time Joida is teaching me up this week. Yeah, she did this on Sunday, and here we go again.
Sorry, Obi.
Dear. Yeah. So how am I finding the podcast so far? To be honest with you, I sat tonight hanging out in my lounge with three lovely people. This is really a hangout for me. So this is turning into a hangout. We've got a cup of tea, cookie. So what's not to love? Honestly, genuinely, in terms of hanging out. And this is, for me, I believe God answers prayers in different ways. And I believe for me, this is sort of discipling each other. This is much more than a podcast for me. This is... Again, we're going to go on to what we're talking about tonight, which is checking in. I think for me, this is more checking in with people that I'm doing work with in life. It's an opportunity for me for us to examine ourselves, for us to examine how we're doing, for us to check in. So yeah, I know I'm sounding a bit selfish, but I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. It's helping me grow. I think I love what it's bringing out in me. I believe the heart of God is for us to have people that we share life with Him, and we walk together. Jesus called the apostles. He never walked alone. The apostles walked together. When Paul was sent out, he moved with other disciples. So I don't think we were ever called to do life alone. And the fact that we're doing this and modern technology has made it possible that we're sharing this not just among us four, but we're sharing it with a wider audience is just a massive blessing. So far, so good. And I've got a lovely set of people that when I can make it to town, they sort of come to my living room. So yeah,
we
that's
don't want to do
feeling.
it without you, Obi.
Yeah,
That's
thank you.
why we missed you when you weren't with us, and so did our listeners. That was a running theme from anyone that spoke to me. Is like, what's going on with Obi? When's he going to be back? So yeah, we didn't want to miss it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
That's
But we'll
great.
get into the check-in bit in a bit. But yeah, so far.
So James, I remember when we all sort of put our hats in and said, yeah, let's do this. And
Mhm.
you were a little bit like, I don't know. And we were a bit like, come on. And you
I
were
was
all right.
I was reluctant,
You were. But how are you finding it?
and I think the first few times I was really nervous.
Yeah.
Public speaking. Who's going to be listening to this? And now, I don't think about that anymore. Really,
That's great.
it is just having a conversation
Yeah.
with our friends, with my
Yeah.
friends, and interesting, wise conversations
Mm.
mysteriously appear. It's great.
It's amazing when you sit around the table with good friends where you think it's going to start, and when you think it's going to finish, it actually sometimes just takes a bit of a detour because
Oh,
we're
yeah.
very,
Go anywhere, couldn't it?
absolutely. And I love that about hanging out with you guys.
Wait till I quote from my phone in a minute. I've been on my phone looking something up, found it.
Oh, did you
Oh,
ask
dear.
Claude?
No, nothing to do with
Oh,
Claude.
I'm impressed. Stuart, what about you? How have you found being part of podcast?
I think it's been really good. No, I think I've enjoyed it. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I think if we started by having conversations together and enjoying those and finding them rich, I think that was why I think you came up with the idea, Joida, of moving to this format. And whenever we sit and talk, as we have been doing this evening so far, we get into some really good areas that are quite personal and also quite thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it's holding a microphone makes it slightly artificial, but I think generally speaking, we've done reasonably well at making it as personal as we can, without worrying too much about who might be on the other side of whatever equipment is being used.
Yeah.
So no, I've enjoyed the process so far.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't think this would have worked if we had tried to pull it together. I think because it's an overflow of us lot meeting up to talk about prep for preaching series and things like that. Because of that, I think you're right. Having a mic does make you feel a little bit on edge because you're thinking, oh, how do you start this? How do you end this? And none of us have done this before.
Yeah.
So we're all complete newbies, but what I think I really love about it is that I don't see any difference in any of us or even with a mic on in our hands to what we would do speaking normally. So
And we've tried a couple of different ways of doing it so far. So we've met at church and we had filters and things over microphones, which worked well from a technical point of view, but I couldn't see our faces as well.
That's right.
And it's actually quite nice not having that because
Yeah.
I think it's because it's so relational.
Yeah.
It's important that we can see each other.
Yeah.
And I've got to be honest, Obi, do you know what? I'm loving this setup tonight.
I love
This is
it.
really relaxed and chilled. I'm really liking it. Sorry, the office.
James is inspired. The man is inspired.
Well, you love it because we come to your house.
I would love to do it at any other person's house.
What James hasn't told you is we're following you wherever you are. So when you go on holiday, the three of us come too with our little equipment.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure how Nina would feel about that.
No, she already knows you're here. So I spoke to her a couple of minutes, and I said, "Oh, by the way, Stewart and the team are coming over, the podcast team." And she said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, they're coming over. They decided to come over to me. You're never gonna get away from these people."
Sorry, Nina, when you're listening, that's it, love. You've made a way for us to come in and ascend upon your house.
Oh yeah.
But no, it is lovely, really lovely. And do you know what I think I really like is talking to you guys. I like getting a male's perspective on things. I'm very aware I'm the only female around this table, and what I really appreciate is hearing a male's perspective and hearing you guys come at it, because I can come at things quite emotionally and you guys can come about it very, very differently, which can bring a real challenge to me. And I really appreciate your honesty. I really appreciate hearing how you guys come at things, because it definitely brings a challenge to my thought processes and how I see and deal with things. So yeah, I feel like you guys encourage me. And like I've said, James, you and Sharon, your beautiful wife definitely challenged me in everyday life. So to
Yeah.
be around here and hearing that wisdom, I really appreciate, and that is overflowed into, you know, my marriage and bringing up the children, which I love. It's rich, and I'm so thankful. So thank you, gentlemen, for having this time with me, the only female around this table, and letting me be a part of this, because I feel it's quite a privilege. It really is. Hello,
Well,
James.
Well, I think you spearhead this, so actually maybe it's us. We'll say thank you
Yeah.
to you.
Definitely.
You are the driving force.
Definitely.
Oh, bless you. I don't feel like that. But thank you. James, go on. You've picked up your phone.
All right.
Come on. What do you
all
want?
right.
What do you want to share tonight?
So we're talking about where we're at, aren't we? Is that fair enough? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some random friend from 20 years ago, who I'd seen recently, had sent me a PDF book, and I was reading through it. It's about revival, and there's someone's done research about various past revivals, and there's a quote here from the revival in 1920. Where was the revival in 1920? Sorry, I should have done. All I'm going to do is read this one quote. There was various revivals around the UK, and this, I read this about a month ago, and it's just got me so excited. So excited. So let me read a paragraph. The secret of his power was... Hold on, let me give it a bit of context. This person has come to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the host that's talking about this person. The secret of his power was no doubt in his prayer life. He stayed at our home for 10 days during the campaign. And although he was up in the morning at 6 o'clock, he never appeared until 12 noon. He spent the hours wrestling with God in prayer. My wife would take up his breakfast and leave it outside his bedroom door, but it was rarely taken in. By his own special request, he was not disturbed by phone or visitor, however urgent. And I mean, I've read this whole book. It's quite a short thing, but that bit there was like, oh wow, this guy spent 6 hours of prayer. They stayed with him for 10 days, every day. 6 hours of prayer, just wrestling with God. And I thought, oh, I don't even do 1 hour. I do far less than that. And that there was something that just sparked inside of me. So I've been wrestling with this myself this last month. And I have made a commitment. This is going to be a very bold statement. I have made a commitment that I will pray for an hour every day for the rest of my life. And I've been doing it, apart from Thursday last week.
I love that, James. I love that.
But I have, on the whole, been doing it, and it's been such a blessing. It's been amazing. And I think one of the first things I noticed is, you know, your mood is up and down in life, isn't it? You can have a good day, a bad day. On average, my mood, the average mood of me, has been much, much more positive. Of course, I have ups and downs. You have good days, bad days, but the average is higher because I'm just in the presence of God. It's just glorious, and I can have amazing times. I try and do it in a whole hour because I was trying 2 half-hour blocks, and you spend the first 5-10 minutes calming your brain. You know what I mean? Just to break through. So if you do it in an hour, you don't lose that 10 minutes twice. And just sitting in God's presence, sometimes it's amazing. And you get to the end of the hour and you're like, I want to do more. And I have had other times where it's been such a drag. It's like, hello, God, are you there? And it's just like, it's nothing.
Yeah.
But I've sat through it. And just pushed in. In the end, I typically might give up just sitting there trying to just pray, and I'll just read the word instead. But I'm spending that hour with God, and it's amazing. So that's where I'm at the moment.
I love it. Where are you at? Where quite a few episodes back, we were talking about being challenged and the Lord was challenging us. Where are you at with your phone and taking your phone to your room and looking and checking
Terrible.
out on things?
Yeah. Hey, but it's okay. It's offset by the hour of prayer, so it's all good.
You crack me
And
up.
in the hour of prayer, the phone goes on aeroplane mode,
Brilliant.
so I can't be disturbed. So, yeah. But
Love
no, my phone habits are quite bad, actually.
Do you know, it's really interesting what you said about the busy mind coming into your time of prayer. I was listening to Stephanie Gretzinger talking about this, about how it seems to be this thing that people will then just kind of sit down, and because their mind is so busy, don't push past it. And they're very quick to go, I can't still my mind, so I'm going to go off elsewhere. And actually how if we press in
Mm-hmm.
and sit in it
Mm-hmm.
and press in and press past it, that's the whole point.
That is the whole point. There's a discipline in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still sitting there. Still
And I think
being.
sometimes there is probably a time to give up and just open the Bible, which obviously opening the Bible is not a bad thing at all. But I am primarily there to try to be in the presence of God. That's my number one agenda. And usually there is a breakthrough and you connect with God. But I do give up sometimes. It's okay, isn't it?
So now
So read the Bible instead.
So now we're in a place where you're like, right, let's check in how you're doing with your phone and how you're checking in with how you're doing in your hourly prayer every day. Because you've put it out there now. We're going to have to just check on it.
You
every
can do
now
that.
and
Yeah. I'm up for that. Ask me randomly.
So when you say that that's where you're at,
Yep.
that's where you're feeling that you're wanting to press in right now and feeling like you want to press into for what purpose? Why are you wanting
Oh,
to
that's
press
such
into
a good
that?
question.
Why is reading that made you go, right, I'm going to get disciplined to have an hour every day for the rest of my life? I mean, can I just say that's pretty extreme to make a promise that says, right, I'm going to do this every day of my life.
It is extreme.
So
You're
tell me
absolutely
why.
right.
Why. Where's that come from? Why?
Because I've been questioning my motivations, actually.
Okay.
And the other thing I've been wrestling with recently is pride and humility. And why? Why am I pressing into God for an hour? Is it so I can get amazingly powerful with God and then go out into the world and be powerful and then look at me, aren't I holy and prophetic and on fire and I carry the presence of God, aren't I holy? I've exaggerated the way I said that, but there's an element of that. There is. That's the terrible truth. So I have to try to control my motivations. Actually, God, I just want to come into your presence because I want to be in your presence. And there's this horrible tension inside me, motivation tension, but swinging between those two. But I think a pure motivation from this is I want to make my life count for something. And surely pressing into God for an hour a day, He's going to use me more. I want to be used more by God. And I think that's pure motivation because my desire is to serve Him. He's put that desire in my heart to serve Him. I think that's pure motivation. But in amongst that, there's, hey, look at me, I'm so holy.
It's such an interesting area when we start talking about our own motivations and things. Because the way you framed it was, I thought really interesting, James. And you talked almost straight away about how your mood had been different through the week. Because I'm doing this, and you weren't saying that's why you were doing it. It was clearly a byproduct of something. But so often we get caught up with the byproducts, not with the actual real reason we should be doing things, I think. And even just knowing where to start with your motives, and looking at those deeply and closely is hard work. It's deep work.
We can be fooled by our own motives.
Yeah.
And not even realise what we're doing it. You were quoting some very interesting stuff earlier on. I'll give you a moment to find it, but you have to share that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll see what I can do while you carry on inspiring us with wisdom and thought.
I think what's really interesting is when you're in true relationship with the Father and you're spending time and you're saying, use me, Lord, are we really ready for what he's going to do to get us ready to be used for him? And actually, sometimes we have grandeur ideas and expectations of what that's going to be.
Absolutely.
And actually, if we are right where he wants us to be, in what can seem the mundane, boring parts of life, it's not the boring parts of life from the Father if he's called us and he's right in that midst with us. But what he does do is almost put a little bit of fire in some places to burn up some stuff, and you kind of are so ready to kind of be like, yes, Lord, use me more, and you want to go, and he'll go, are you ready for me to shift and change and transform you? Because
starts with us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Are we ready when we're crying out, Lord, use me, for him to come in and kind of put a little bit of fire underneath that attitude and what our heart's doing, what our attitude's doing, how we're loving on people? It's almost as if that.
So I said that scary prayer this morning. Something along the lines of, God, purify me. Whatever that looks like, I surrender it. I purify me, etc. Knowing that could be a very, very scary prayer. That could be awful. So really saying that prayer cautiously, but you know what? What else have we got?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we're not serving Jesus, what else? What else is there? So give it all to him.
It's that interesting one, isn't it, of going, what are you going to show me? I just recently prayed that. Get me ready. Get me ready. Thinking, you're going to make me look in the mirror. Because if I'm asking, get me ready, prepare me, that means you're going to say, okay, daughter, then let's show some stuff. Let me show you. Make my heart ready, make my thoughts ready, make my hands ready, get me ready for whatever it is that you're asking me to do. And I know that that is going to be a stripping back and a vulnerability. And it's not scary. I think the more you've done it with him, you know he doesn't take you to the edge and tip you over. He takes you gently. But are we willing to open up that can of worms within me? And I was like, yeah, I am, because I don't, it's going to cost me not to. I don't want to do whatever it is that you're asking me to do and not be ready.
Exactly. It's going to cost you not to.
Because I don't want to hurt. I don't want to cause damage. I don't want to do any of those things. So get me ready. And you take an in-breath going, I trust you because you know me better than I know myself. So get me ready, whatever that looks like. So it'll be interesting, James, as you're spending this time with him, what he's going to do and what he's going to... Would you share that with us along the journey when he starts to bring up stuff?
In 6 months' time and see
yeah.
if I'm glowing or something.
I think it'd be interesting to hear the times when, I mean, you'll tell us when it's working well, and I think you'll be really honest about the times when it's not working so well. But it'll be interesting to hear of the excitement, the words from God you're hearing, but also the boredom, the challenge, the difficulty, the roadblocks, all of it. Because I'm not sure when I've grown most in my life, because I'm not sure I'm very good at measuring that. Because I'm not sure I even know what growth is. And I hope that's not deconstructing too much, but I hope you know what I mean by saying that. You know, I know what I used to think growth was, and now I look and I probably wouldn't measure those things anymore because they don't seem as important now. So, and I suspect in another 20 years' time or 30 years' time, I'll be looking for different measures again. And then when I see Jesus face to face, I'll realise that not much of it mattered anyway, because he's got a whole different load of measures, and ultimately those are the ones we want. But when I think I've grown, has often been, I think, in the most challenging of times when I've not known where I'm going, where I couldn't say it's been times of progress or sensing God, or I think it's been in the times where I've not known God was there.
Yeah.
And I've wondered, Lord, what are you doing? And those actually, I think, have been some of the most profoundly helpful times in retrospect.
Yeah.
Awful at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not high points, but they've been ones where I look back and I know that Lord's been with me, and I know He's been walking with me, and sometimes I've all I've been able to do is be silent before God, and so it wasn't when it was I could have read my Bible, but actually just that place of silence before Him was so profound, and as you say, hard to do when your mind's full of stuff, but sometimes you end up there not of your own choosing.
Yeah. There are times I've sat and I've known it's just to sit, and my job is to try and keep my mind wandering off, but just to sit in His presence. No words needed, and He's just feeding you. He's feeding your soul, and so your mind in a way is switched off. If that makes any sense, just trying to sit there at His feet, and He's just feeding directly into your soul. You don't know what He's doing really.
Yeah, make sure you share it with us, all the journey, because I think it will be really helpful for some that are on the same journey at the same time with you. It will be really encouraging for others that haven't been in this place where they're spending that time. So I hope that we'd all share. I mean, that's what tonight's for us to share a little bit more of what's been going on in our journey. But yeah, I look forward, James, to hearing some what goes on in this season that you're in. So yeah, bring it up and share with us.
I will.
Along the journey. Does anybody else want to share what's going on? Stuart, James had said about a couple of quotes of a book that you're reading and just going through at the moment.
So I find myself, I enjoy reading when I get time, and I think you chatted, I think it was in this conversation on the podcast about phone use, and was that in an earlier conversation? And I do I'm challenging myself at the moment, and not always very well, that I'm actively engaged in reading a lot of the day, actually. If I'm not in conversations or meetings or whatever, you're reading emails, you're responding to stuff, I'm reading for material I'm preparing often, but also it's so easy just to read because there's so much information out there on the internet, on our phones all the time, and most of it's not well constructed. It's just stuff and words put together in sentences, whether it's news websites or whatever. So I'm challenging myself to read a little bit more and come back to reading books. You've heard of them, those things that people used to read years ago. And I'm reading. I generally have a couple on the go these days, and I'm reading one which is it's looking at the topic of how we grow as more mature Christians. So looking at Christian maturity. And James was talking about pride earlier. And it's just really interesting just looking at some of the quotes that were here. And we were chatting about a particular example we were sharing and how pride, the quote is this: during our adult years, pride often disguises itself as humility, as a strategy for further enhancement. And just looking at how our pride features even when we think we're doing well. So we were chatting about motivations earlier, and this is another quote from the same book. Our motivation for generosity is often more inspired by the desire to feel good about ourselves than by a real love for others. And then this person goes on to say, for example, a number of times during my years of ministry, I've been tempted to move to the inner city to live among the poor as a sign of my commitment to social justice. It took a good spiritual director to point out to me that, at least in my case, such a move there would no doubt do a lot more for me than for the poor. My moving there would make me feel good, enhance my status among my colleagues, and will be a wonderful thing on my CV, but would not, unless I would more radically change my life and ministry, do much for the poor. Ultimately, it would serve my pride more than it would serve the poor. And I find that, and so many other quotes in this book, so challenging when we come to look at our own motives. So I'm asking myself the question a little bit more about my motives for doing things, and trying not to end up sort of with a deep dive into that, because you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
end up
Can get
staring
caught
at your
up.
own belly button,
Yeah,
and that's no
Yeah.
good for anybody.
Yes.
But just occasionally, just check in.
Yeah.
You know, what's pushing me, what's pulling me, in moments of excitement or anxiety. What's going on? What am I noticing?
Mm.
I'm just trying to check in with those.
So where this book, how did you come across it?
Good question. I think this author has written a previous one that was recommended, and I think it was reading about the first one that I then came on the second one,
Okay.
which was, so the first one was a vision for spirituality for those kind of in the first stage of spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I then was intrigued by this title about Christian maturity.
Mm.
I can't remember who recommended it or where it was recommended from. It's a great question, Joida, because often one thing leads on to another, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
So I suspect I'd been doing some reading around, and this book had been recommended.
So how far into the book are you?
About a quarter of a way.
And are you finding it quite punchy?
First chapter, yeah, it was a bit of a struggle, but yeah, this last one, I've got a lot of highlighting going on, and it's causing a lot of reflecting. So yeah, I've read another one I chatted to you guys about fairly recently about pastoral ministry, which again is equally challenging, and I'm just finding that as I read, whether it's scripture or books in this case, often there'll be a phrase or a couple of passages or a page or two that I just need to copy out and look at for a long time and ponder on and discuss and let it frame my thinking.
So is this something that is your normal pattern, or is this something that you are feeling that you're being led to in this season to ponder over some of
good
these
question.
deeper things?
I think the themes are probably have become my normal pattern. I wish I could say that reading and thinking deeply was my normal pattern. I think I too easily fill my mind with dross, just with stuff that's around, because there's lots of information out there, and I like assimilating lots of information,
Yeah.
and that's very easy to do. So,
So are you sensing, so it's easy to come across a book and sit in it. Do you feel like actually this is something that you're feeling led to, and that these are the things that you're like, actually, okay, Lord, what are you saying to me in this? And is this a season that you're asking me to do? And are there similar, out of the other book that you were reading and this, are there similarities that you're going, okay, Lord, there's something here that you're trying to say? Or are you just in a stage of going,
just reading it.
this is reading it and God, okay, so this is just your...
I suppose sometimes I read, I don't know how you guys find this when you're listening to or watching stuff. Sometimes you sense an alignment. Sometimes a source of information can give you permission to be in a certain place or to sit and think a certain thing. And I suppose that initially that's affirming. And then what I find is helpful is when that same source then challenges you, because you've already been lulled into a sense of security. Like, oh, okay, they get me, or I get them. I kind of identify with this person or where they're at. And there's just a little bit of a sucker punch somewhere in there that makes you start being challenged. So yeah, already I'm questioning some fairly core things about how I act at times, whether it's in relationships or attitudes. And I'm using these challenges to reflect on how I'm doing things, and hopefully that's shaping how I'm doing things. So I don't think I've not made, like James has, a lifelong commitment to go in a particular direction. Although I could probably make a lifelong promise, to not eat a certain food that I don't like anyway. I could probably manage that one. But on this case, I think it's going to be one of those ones where there's just a few bits that few tools, few challenges that you add into your self-reflection, to my self-reflection, that will hopefully change my direction slightly, which will result in me ending up hopefully in a very different place in a really good way. But I don't think it's going to be something that everybody else is going to observe necessarily.
Mhm.
But maybe just an incremental course direction, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward. Will you share some more along the
Yeah,
journey
sure.
with
If
your
there's
book
if
and
there's stuff that God's doing, I'd be glad
Yeah.
to. And just to come back with some honesty, James is sharing about his prayer life and all that, and just how good that's been. I was sharing confidently last week about my Bible reading and 3 chapters a day, Old Testament, 1 of New, and a psalm, and it was great. That's my plan. And this week it's been a bit shocking. So I've been all over the place. And I was saying, Obi was challenging quite rightly last week about, just a verse sometimes. And I found myself reading chapters thinking, Lord, what are you saying? Because I'm reading it and it's not been quite as clear sometimes. So I was listening to my own words coming back to bite me a bit this week. And so there we go. I was reflecting on what I
Love
said
it.
last week.
I love it.
But we're going to keep going. And,
Yeah.
and God's going to speak and it's going to be okay.
And this
Yeah.
is not, you know what? This is not religialistic.
No.
It's. I looked. So there was a bit of a pause as I said that because Stuart normally takes the mickey out of my choice
No, I
of
don't, mate,
language.
take the
You
mickey.
laugh at me and
No,
think what I
don't laugh.
say is.
I think it's wonderful that you can just make up a word
And run with it.
and go with it. And we all know exactly what you mean. It's brilliant.
Listen, you have
Yeah.
said, have you not? I know this is in the context of reading the word, that if you say something, you say
Yeah.
it confidently, everyone will just think that's
Absolutely.
an absolute word and that's what it says.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
I'm claiming that one.
Yeah.
We're not. Listen, the life with the Lord is, we're all changing and
Yeah.
learning stuff, and this is not this is a set way, and we've got to do
Yeah.
it this way.
No.
And I love that honesty. Do you know what? We're not.
I think we've got to be,
perfect.
haven't we? And
Yeah.
we want to hear James's ups and downs,
Yeah.
and because
Yeah.
if you just hear this is the commitment I've made, whether it's from me talking about Bible reading or James talking about prayer or somebody else talking about something else, you'll think that we live on some spiritual mountaintop
Oh, come
somewhere,
on. Yeah.
and
Not
that's
found that one yet.
that's not the reality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, we want to be having a life conformed to the image of Jesus and being
Yeah.
shaped to be more like him, but that's worked out in the day-to-day reality of life, like everybody else's. And I think the benefit of this, we're checking in on podcast and on us, but the benefit of this kind of conversation, I think, is that we get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
It's a bit like a life group,
Yeah.
but in a
Mm.
smaller setting,
Yeah.
where actually you haven't got a program, you haven't got a sense of we've got to get something done this evening. We can just check in and be
Yeah.
real.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing.
I'm looking at you, Mr.
Oh,
Obi.
who, me? Yeah.
Where are things
I'm just
at for
enjoying the
you?
conversation. Just flowing.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So where are you at? Just checking in on you. How are you doing and where are you at? And are there any things that the Lord's saying, challenging?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Generally speaking, I think I'm in a good place. Thank God. But then, like we do on this journey, every stage brings new perspectives.
Yeah.
I think we will still be discussing God at 90 if we're on this side of
Yeah, I hope so.
eternity.
I hope so.
We'll still be discussing new visions and new things
Oh,
that God
yeah,
is
come on.
challenging and speaking to our hearts. This season, I think is a couple of things really. If I'm being really honest, is weighing things. One of the things, Stuart, you've been talking about church and about things coming up, and some of the things that have been speaking to me is about freedom. I'm popular about freedom and freedom from past. And I think in the last couple of weeks, and it's something I sort of I've been thinking about as well. I'll drift, then I'll come back to the main point. But is one of those places where you're at, where you're weighing things. So I'm almost at, and I'm quite conscious, Stuart, and I can relate to a lot of the things you said about you also have to be trusting in God and not get yourself tied up in knots and weigh forever and weigh every single breath you take and take God out completely out of the equation and go into a spin. But I've been reflecting on the journey so far. I've been reflecting, and again, it's about motive, it's about how far have we come and how far are we going? How is the journey so far with God? Personally, I'm talking personally here. And a lot of things are playing on my mind. I'm quite driven person. I like doing things. I like getting out there and achieving. A couple of things have also happened in my life personally, not big, that has made me sort of realize how far I have not come from some freedoms from the past. That's the reality. So you do think that you've moved on, and you are moving on, and God is affirming us. The fact, and let me just put this out there, the fact that what I see as God actually doing the work in me is that you're able to put the finger on these things fairly quickly now than before. It's a testimony to God's goodness. It's a testimony to His, and it's humbling as well, because I think it highlights my need for God. It highlights my continued hunger and thirst for daily encounters with God, because where I am at the moment is weighing things and realizing that when it comes to it, I'm not as further down the road as I think I am when I'm worshiping and when I'm raising my hands to God. And when those things that come around, those weak spots come, I do find that I've still got a lot that I need God to do in my life. So whilst we are pushing and I'm relying on God and trusting God, what has come to my mind recently is that God's still got a lot of work to do, and I'm still working that work out with God realistically. The good thing is that I'm trusting Him on that journey, and I'm believing Him, and He's highlighting and pinning things that sometimes being still is okay. Sometimes not doing is okay. And that's something people that are naturally laid back might find easy, and something someone like me is a mountaintop challenge to do. My lovely wife Nina spoke to me before she traveled, and she said to me about something that's going on that we're looking at. I said, I don't want to come back from the States and hear something. And that's how unpredictable I am to my lovely wife. So yeah, for me, I think that's where I am. I mean, I even had a chat with a few couple the other day that I spent time with in church, and I came away from that conversation, and I came home yesterday in the peace and quiet of the still of night. I just prayed because I reflected on our conversation. I realized that I was encouraging them, but I came away, and the Holy Spirit pointed out to the fact that I spent half of that time sounding off.
Okay.
And it's something that was so humbling for me, because I was speaking encouragement, but there was so much of, here is how I've done it. And you know, the Holy Spirit came our way and said, that was total. Literally. And I've just been repenting of that conversation since last night, and this me being honest, because I was encouraging, you know, I was speaking positive, and probably they wouldn't know or see otherwise, but the Holy Spirit put a finger and said, you were the center of that conversation. Perhaps you just shut your mouth and listened and just prayed and left. And here is where we are, and it doesn't mean that there are certain times that those encouragements won't speak words of life, and it might have spoken words of life, but this is what the Holy Spirit is saying to me. He may have used me to encourage, but He's saying you've got more work to do. So I'm just realizing how exciting.
I love it, Obi. That's so exciting.
You know,
it's so exciting that you're hearing God that clearly on an issue like that, where you're open to His gentle prompting and correcting. And as you were talking, I was just, hopefully it's an encouragement to you, but I suspect it's for everybody as well, that we're never as bad as we think we are. And we're never as good as we think we are. And
that's fair.
God knows us and loves us.
And
it's wonderful.
It is.
But yeah, absolutely right to respond to that, and that interaction will shape you as
so
you're
right.
reflecting on that. Yeah.
Having that openness, I think, it takes a while, doesn't it, of trusting that the Father is good, and He's a good Father, and that opening yourself up, opening ourselves up to Him to bring that correction is an element of trust, isn't it? Of being open to say, I want to hear what you've got to say. Come and mould me and shape me. Come and
genuine correction.
Yeah.
Not you weren't just putting yourself down. Because I went away from last time we recorded a podcast, and you'd said something after I had, Obi, and I thought, why did I say that? What Obi said was right. Why did I even, kind of sound off in the way I was? And I was kind of quite hard on myself. But actually, there's real wisdom in what you did, which is you just reflected, you let the Holy Spirit speak, and next time you'll do something different. But yeah, reflecting without beating yourself up too much.
Absolutely. He's still using us.
Yeah,
He's still trusting us. I never believed that he meant for me to not speak again. I think we just realized that He's calling us to be a light, to encourage, but He's still doing the work in us to make sure that we shine and shine brighter the way He wants us to shine. And just for us to know that, for me, it's humbling to begin to see that for me, God is molding and He is working, and He will work for eternity. But I'm beginning to see that we are little in the grand plan of God, but we are vital. We are a small vital part, and sometimes it's not about how great we feel. It's about fulfilling God's purpose at that point in time. And this is not to say you have to, because I'm quite conscious as well that it's not a discouragement to not go. And sometimes God calls us in uncomfortable places, because the picture that came to my mind is that of Esther when she was called. And her uncle said, who knows if you were in this position for such a time as this. And Esther took bold and asked for the whole of Israel to pray for her, and she went into the king unprepared. So it's not a dampener to say that when you hear clearly, and sometimes God can speak to people and God can call us into uncomfortable places, but like you rightly said, James, it's about us examining our hearts and examine our motive and being honest before God.
I love the fact that David did that. King David was like, examine me, search me, and know me, Lord, and remove anything that displeases you. And I love that. I love that he had a heart that was still desperately wanting God come and do, because he knew some of the things that he did, and yet that was that complete and utter reliance on the Father. And God saw him as a kid and said, hey, don't look on the outside, look, you are looking at all of his brothers. I see this one, and I see his heart, and he has a heart after my own heart.
Absolutely.
And that wasn't God saying he's perfect. That was this man has got a heart that is going to come to me. And even in all of his misery of messing up and doing his own thing and taking what wasn't his, he was still a man that cried over, saying, God, search my heart and remove anything that displeases you. And you think, I love the fact that we just see that that's all that God wants, because he knows we're not perfect. Otherwise, why did he send his son? He knows we're flawed, and all he says is, come to me. And it's a costly prayer when you say, Lord, search my heart and remove anything that displeases you. But when you know the way that he calls you is good for you and those around you, why wouldn't you ask that? And asking him, Lord, come and do something in my heart, and come and change it, come and release it, is such a beautiful prayer to pray. And he's clearly seen your heart, and he comes in because he's a dad, doesn't he? He disciplines the ones that he loves. And I hate the word discipline, but there's something so beautiful in the back that he sharpens those, because he wants us to be walking in those ways to free us. And I love that. So Obi, thank you for sharing. I just love it. the honesty and the openness out here, I just love it, because we need to do this as a church, as a community. There has to be this openness and this honesty to encourage other people, because none of us have got it right.
The three of us agree we do. So Joida, your turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really know where to start. So I think I'm in a bit of a mix of a place with all of you guys, to be honest.
Okay.
Last summer, I felt like the Lord was saying some stuff at New Wine, and it felt bigger than me, and it felt pretty scary. The thought of I didn't fully understand what he was saying, but what I did get a sense was it was bigger than me. So I was on my knees going, "You've got to make me ready," and feeling the weight of responsibility of that. If you're calling me into this place, you've got to get me ready.
Yeah.
And feeling the weight of, if I come as I am, I don't want to do what the church in history has done, is cause hurt and division.
Yeah.
And has caused, because of man's pride and arrogance, to lead people into place which is unattainable, unreachable.
Yeah.
And feeling this huge weight of going, I prayed a long, long time ago, Lord, send me. But then all of a sudden there's that reality of going, this feels bigger than me. And if you don't do something in me, I don't want it. A, I don't want it if it's not what you want. And B, if it is what you want, you've got to make me ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's an imminent thing that's going to happen or whether it's something in years to come. And I don't know that I even fully know what it is, but I've got a vague idea that it's bigger than me, and it's the weight of that responsibility. So I've been sitting in that sort of since July last year. And I think we had a conversation round at James's on Thursday, and speaking to Zach. And really interestingly, Obi, with you talking and what you were saying, it left me feeling quite heavy. And I spoke to Sharon the next day just to check in how Zach was doing, and realising the weight of words that we have over other people, and knowing as adults the weight of words that we have over the younger generation is really key and really important. And feeling the weight, because this conversation got fairly heated, and I still don't fully know why it's left me feeling quite heavy, and it took me to a place of going, Lord, if my mouth spoke and it didn't speak of you, would you A, forgive me, and B, would you wipe it and eradicate it from Zach's mind? And I'm still journeying that I still, even in conversation today, as I was sharing with my bestie, I don't know the weight, and it made me feel quite emotional. And I couldn't decide whether it was because I could see myself in Zach all those years ago, or whether it was the weight of going, I spoke with such boldness. Do I have the authority to speak in that boldness? So sitting in it going, you've got to get me ready, because I think I might have failed miserably there, Lord. And not, like you say, not beating myself up, but being in that place of feeling the weight of responsibility of when you speak, and you speak into a situation, and you're speaking on behalf of God, or you're speaking about the word, or you speak, make sure it's right before the Lord. Make sure it's right, because you can damage. So I think I'm sitting weighing this up, and weighing the whole, what's motivation for things, why do you want things? And I feel like there's just this honing and this sharpening and asking these bigger questions that I still have no answers to, but I'm willing, and I'm saying, search my heart, Lord.
Yeah.
And remove anything off me that displeases you. And being open to say, well, show me.
Yeah.
And if there's attitude there that needs dealing with, then deal with it. And if there's pride or anything, deal with it.
Well, that's all we can do.
Yeah.
That's all we can do. And we've been talking about journeys. And well, maybe if we get to 90, maybe we'll still be on a journey. And we're human beings.
Yeah.
We'll never get it right. But the important thing is that we're trying to get it right. And we're trying to be humble and trying not to be prideful. So we have to continue this self-analysis. And this self-analysis will just go on until we meet Jesus and we're made perfect.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think I was hypercritical of myself, and I probably spent most of my teens and into my 20s being quite critical of myself, and how there's been that shift and that change of going, I won't criticize myself, but I'm open to the Lord to come in and to challenge me.
Do the work.
Because I trust him.
Yeah.
And he doesn't come accusing.
No.
He comes in like you. He didn't come and accuse
No.
you and blow you out of the water. He came in with a gentle, son, come on. Let's just shine that. And he's done that to me. And it's like, I trust that.
Yeah.
I really trust that
Yeah.
more so than me. I mean, I've always had a picture of like the vultures. They come into the carcass and they pick and pick it and pick it and pick it until there's nothing left. Now that used to be me.
Mm-hmm.
If ever I did a performance with singing, whether I spoke to whatever I did, it was like the vultures came in on my mind and they picked over the carcass of everything I said
Yeah.
and brought me to a place of feeling stripped back till there was nothing left. And the first time I preached was the very first time that I knew God had done something in me, because the vultures didn't come in, and the vultures haven't come in since.
Right.
And it's almost as if a vulture wants to linger,
Yeah.
tell it to do one,
Yeah.
because the Father doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Those are not his words. That is not his process with us. He comes in pretty specific, which is why I'm still sitting with him going, Lord, I don't know what caused me to feel heavy about this conversation with Zach, but whatever it was, I come before you and would you show me and give me, because I feel safe to do that, because I'm not going to allow the vultures in.
No.
And that's what I love about him. He is gentle and kind.
Yes.
And he corrects with love.
Yeah. Because we, as James says, we are going to make mistakes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And sometimes we do those unwittingly, and sometimes we intentionally go the wrong way. And God, like David did, King David did, and God brought him up about that. He said, this is not okay. And Joida, as you pointed out, he did repent and he did turn back to the Lord at that point. But whatever way round they come, we're going to mess up. We shouldn't be setting out to do that. But those vultures that you described, they often come to us when we've got this belief somehow that we shouldn't mess up, we shouldn't make mistakes, we ought to be getting it right.
Yeah.
And whilst we try to, being quick to apologise is probably better than being perfect.
Yeah.
I suspect, because we're not going to attain perfection.
Yeah.
So where we have messed up, it's a good thing to go back and say, hey, and if God does show you something, I'm sure you will go back to it, because I know you, the kind of character you are. So you'll go back and have a conversation with Zach or whoever, and as we all are doing, we'll reflect on those these days, and hopefully we're a bit quicker to go back and have the second conversation with someone. So when I said this, I wasn't really wise.
I suppose that's the beauty of humility as well, isn't it? Well, I don't think you'd do that if you're full of pride.
No, I don't think so. No.
That's that lovely little check-in when you think, okay, Lord, if I'm willing to do that, then Lord, you have really worked in that area of pride in my life, and there's still a way to go.
And I know we've talked about this before. This is one of the benefits of being in church community and church family in a real way, because you get to be with people who are wiser than you and further on in different areas. I'm feeling that sitting in this room tonight. I'm listening to you guys, learning from you, and just encouraged by the conversation. But I love it when we get together in church and you're having, or visiting people in people's homes, and there's people just share in such a real way. I always come away having learned something.
You did say on Sunday, was it on Sunday that you said authentic community? I think that's what we're doing. It's not social media community. It's authentic as much as we can be, and being true and honest, and being safe to feel that this is different. This is God's will for us to press into Him in community, to lean on each other's strengths. James has got strength, Joida's got strength, Stewart's got strength, I've got strength, and I'm aware these days more of my weakness that I think was strengths. And
That's an
just
interesting
being able to
reflection.
lean into someone and say, hey, here's where I think this is not going right. And that's just, it's just a relief to be able to trust that you're working with God, and God has placed people in your lives, and I just love it. I just love this community that God has placed me into. It's a prayer that I've prayed for a long time. And if you're listening, is a prayer is a good place to be, where I know that I can. I mean, I've had Stewart speak. People now start saying, someone said to me, "Do you know you're now sounding like Stewart?" I said, "Mind how you hang out with people."
That's dangerous, Ovie.
I know. I'm wary.
Yeah.
I'm watching you. So,
It's very dangerous.
but
Yeah.
it's just wonderful not to have the burden of impression.
Yeah.
And have something to live up to, and just trusting God and trusting that He's who He's called us to be. And like you said, we can mess up, and we can open our hearts and say, "Yeah, here we go again," and God is faithful.
Yeah. Well, man, I feel like we've just scratched the surface of what God's saying and doing, and yeah. I think when you're in relationship with the Father, it isn't stagnant for long. Even when you're walking through a really, really hard journey where you don't feel like you're hearing Him, like you said, Stuart, it's amazing how you get to the other side of that little part of your journey.
Yeah,
and He's
sure.
been so
Yeah,
working
absolutely.
and speaking, even though you don't recognise His voice.
And it's been the deepest things He's ever said come out of those times.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't not go through them.
Oh,
You know, it's yeah.
I so say that when I had my breakdown, I would go through that again to get the results in my relationship with Him and the freedom within myself, because it was horrendous to be going through it in the midst of it, but coming out of it was worth every single bit of pain, every single bit, because I got to know Him and His character in a way that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't have walked through that, who has shaped me and shaped our relationship. So if you are walking through a place right now where you're not hearing Him and you're feeling it's really dry ground, He's in it. He's absolutely in it with you, and He is speaking. You might not recognize it and you might not hear it right now, but He is speaking and He is doing something. And share it with somebody. Share this stage that you're in with someone, because they're going to want to hear when you come out the other side the things that He was saying to you along the way. And you know, if you are in a place where He's challenging you right now in your character, do you know what? Don't be discouraged and don't actually feel like you're a failure. He disciplines the ones that He loves. And it actually builds a greater relationship with Him, and trust Him. Don't allow the vultures to pick over the bones, but trust that the things that are coming up, maybe about your character or your thought life or what you're doing with your hands, if that's coming, then trust it and go to somebody with it that you trust and allow them to pray with you in this as you're walking, because He's just sharpening you, and He's sharpening all of us, as you've heard tonight. And it's not always easy to hear, but He's a loving and gracious Father that brings things to us with love, and His motivation is freedom.
Yeah.
1,000,000% it is freedom.
Yep.
And
Come on.
I hope that you will be encouraged by tonight, that we're all journeying this out. We've said it many a times, we don't have the answers. We're just brothers and sister walking this journey with the Father the best way that we know how, and that is relying on the Word, relying on the Spirit, and relying on the Father. That's for sure. So be encouraged. And guys, thank you for being really honest and really raw tonight and sharing it. And I look forward to us sharing some more of this journey.
Yeah,
It's been good.
Yeah, really, really good. It's been a lovely evening. So, Obi, thank you for hosting us.
You're welcome.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
very much.
I'm feeling cool.
It's been good. And
You're welcome.
yeah, you guys have a lovely couple of weeks. And listeners, please be encouraged and go and speak to some people and share with some people like we have tonight, because I'm telling you, it brings richness to your life.
Yes.
Have a blessed evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.